7 means healing. There was an interesting comment, and I'm going to bring this up when we come to the actual episode to do with the flood, but I think I'll raise it here. The gentleman concerned, I had long back and forth with him. He said he didn't want to be mentioned, but he is a geologist. And he said, with all the flood narratives around the world, most could be seen as being negative. But in ancient Egypt, it's always seen as a positive because the flooding of the Nile. So I think when we come to the narrative, it's destroying the earth. Some people would say, well, there you go, that shows God as being unloving. Or you could say, no, it's to get rid of something to save mankind. The number 7 points to healing because this is a healing flood. It's a sluicing off of the foulness and stench of what has been before. So I'm just interested that the number 7 can also mean purification or healing.
And I would agree with the general premise that the flood was designed not to destroy humanity in the way that we understand humanity. It was to protect humanity and to cut out the cancer that had been formed in the world. And this was God's way of dealing with it, his way of wiping things off. How that happened, what that looked like, the manner it took, I don't know. I know what the scripture teaches, but I also know where it teaches it in scripture in terms of the first 11 books of the Bible, which I would say are mytho-history in terms of they are very true, but that does not mean that to say that it is literal in every sense. But I do think the truth of it is absolutely seriously true, that God at some point in history intervened. He did so in a dramatic way, and he did so in order to protect and promote recreation, because it's cyclical. We move into this from chaos to order to disorder to recreation, from chaos to order to disorder to recreation. And that's what we'll get into when we get into the flood, I think.
Talking about the flood, I'm just going on to verse 4. The way it's written, it's almost saying, hurry up. The Lord said unto Noah, now it's time to get onto the ark. And then 4 says, for yet 7 days. So I'm assuming you got 7 days to get on, and then the rain's going to come, substantive enough that it's going to cause issues. And it would rain for 40 days and 40 nights. Probably worth saying at this point about the number 40, because again, that's a sacred, significant number. In the Bible, it tends to mean new life, transformation. Well, that seems to be the case here. Change, in other words, a change is about to happen. You talked about the Hebrew concept of generations, and I believe 40 was the years before the new generation came in. It was the cyclical generational period. Moses fasted for 40 days on Sinai. Israel was 40 years in the desert. So 40 is a significant number here.
It is. Back to the first point that you made about this for the 7 days. That is a heads up call. Now, why has that been specified? If you were to go back to the Judaic commentaries, the Rashi commentary particularly for this, he says these are the 7 days of mourning for the righteous man Methuselah, for whose honour the Holy One, blessed be he, had regard, and therefore postponed punishment. He then goes on to say, go and calculate the years of Methuselah, and you'll find that they came to an end, i.e. he died, in the 600th year of Noah's life, which coincides with the date of the flood. So there's 7 days of mourning. Remember what Methuselah's name means? His death shall bring. And then the flood comes in the 600th year of Noah's life. It also closes off that genealogy with Methuselah being mentioned. His death shall bring the despairing comfort and rest. And again, 40 days. 40 is the number of lashes that you would get for deliberately violating God's commandments. So Deuteronomy 25 verse 3. They'd normally stop at 39 so they didn't break the law.
40 lashes on your back, that would have done some serious damage.
You've only got to look at the Passion of Christ to see how bad that sort of stuff was going on. 40, as you said, the number of days that Moses is up on Mount Sinai receiving Torah, the law. The number 40 seems to be ushering in a new period. Within the Gospels of Matthew, Mark and Luke, you've got Jesus out there in the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights, with wild animals, it says, tempted by Satan, chaos, the adversary, before he then returns in the power of the Spirit. So recreation, if you like, a regeneration. He comes out of that wilderness in the power of the Spirit, having been ministered to and supported by angels. Post his resurrection, he appears to his disciples and his followers for 40 days before he then ascends. You see these patterns in Scripture and the weave of all of these things, how they dovetail. It's always a signifier that this is going to happen. And then when it does, it comes about in a different way, and it's a rebirth, it's a regeneration. And it's normally done with power.